I love photography, love taking pictures, love looking at pictures, love talking about pictures. I'm what you might call a photoholic. When I was growing up, becoming a photographer was the furthest thing from my mind. I was more prone to the idea of becoming a rock star or Major League Baseball player, except for the fact that I had zero talent in either of those areas. Somehow, though, I've always thought that photography must have been my destiny. When I think back to my childhood during the 1950s, I remember poring over those big picture magazines like Life, Look, National Geographic. I really believe that they helped shape my early interest in photography. Not only did they show me places and events and people that were interesting, but they were presented in such a way that I was totally captivated. For the most part, I'm self-taught. But I was very lucky because I was learning from the best. Early on, I discovered the work of the great black and white photographers Weston, Cartier-Bresson, Robert Frank, Arnold Newman, Avedon, and Penn. And while all of them had a big influence on me, it was color photography that I really connected with. The work of photographers like J. Maisel, Pete Turner, and Ernst Haas absolutely blew me away. What they were doing with color spoke loud and clear to me, especially Haas. His book, The Creation, showed me the potential and power of color and inspired not only me, but an entire generation of photographers. In 1984, I had the good fortune to travel to Japan on a photo tour led by Ernst. That trip was a major turning point for me photographically and personally. Spending time with him, listening to him, and just having the opportunity to observe him all had a major impact. From then on, he became my mentor. His wisdom, philosophy, and wit I still carry with me to this day and continue to try and pass this on to my students. I think that my first biggest challenge as a photographer was just gaining confidence in what I was doing. Just the idea of making a living, taking pictures, seemed totally foreign to me. I didn't come from a fine art background. My father wasn't an artist, my mother wasn't a poet, and we didn't live in Paris. We were just your typical middle-class family. Equipment-wise, I owned a 35mm camera and a couple of lenses, but that was it. But the one thing I had going for me was this burning desire to make pictures. When I started out, there were no full-time jobs available as an assistant where I lived, so I just dove in. So I put together a portfolio that was, when I think back about it now, beyond embarrassing. And I went out presenting my work to people in advertising who were actually all very encouraging. What I didn't realize at that time was that those are the same people who have bullshitting down to a fine art. I'm sure that as soon as I left their offices, they were rolling on the floor laughing. And because I didn't really know any better, my determination and my own naivety kept me going. And I kept shooting and editing and critiquing the work. Eventually, I began producing work that not only started landing me assignments, but that I was actually happy with too. When I look back now, that was the beginning of the time that I began to recognize all those elements that are so important to me photographically. Bold color, appreciation for light, a graphic sensibility, and a desire to capture a moment. Getting that first big break is a combination of luck, opportunity, and preparation all coming together. And for me, ironically, I happened to be at the right place, Houston, at the right time during the oil boom. The economy was soaring, all the businesses related to the energy industry were growing rapidly, and a very good graphic designer took a chance on using me for an assignment involving a major client. She had faith in me, and because I didn't want to disappoint her, I put an enormous amount of time and energy into making some of the best photographs I'd ever made at that time. And it paid off because it was the beginning of a collaboration that lasted for many years. I credit her for giving me the chance to show what I could do. I think we all need people like that in our lives. My photographic life has been made up primarily of two parts, my commercial work and my personal work. Some photographers don't make that distinction, and that's fine. But for me, it's always been about shooting photographs, whether I'm getting paid for it or not. With commercial assignments, I'm hired to go out and create images that help solve a client's particular problem or help create a specific image. It all sounds glamorous, but creating visual solutions is the name of the game regardless of the circumstances. No matter what, you've got to come back with the goods. There's pressure, there are deadlines, there's unusual circumstances, there are demanding clients, and there are no guarantees. And as a good friend of mine likes to remind me, that's why they call it work. The bottom line is that you're only as good as your client. I always say that you owe it to the client to try it their way. You owe it to yourself to do it your way, and hopefully they'll like your way. But rest assured that if they don't like either, you'll be hitting the highway. Personal projects are the ones we feel closest to. They're the ones we don't do for money, but rather for the experience, the cause, whatever. The main thing is that it needs to be about something you're really interested in or passionate about. One of my first personal projects dealt with the myth of the American cowboy. I found a ranch in West Texas and began documenting the cowboy lifestyle. And of course, what I found was how little it had changed from the 19th century. Over a period of 8 or 9 years, I attended the semi-annual spring and fall roundups, befriending the cowboys, gaining their confidence, and also just an appreciation for them as individuals as well as their profession. It was a great experience, and it taught me the importance of continually maintaining a photo project on some level in order to give your work focus and direction. Every working photographer has had the embarrassing moment, the big screw-up. It's only natural if you consider Murphy's Law and the fact that you're dealing with sophisticated equipment and situations that you don't always have control over. I've done everything from shoot without film in the camera to unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, insulting the client. But the thing you learn from all of these experiences are not so much about taking pictures as it is about dealing with situations gone bad. Photography is as much a performing art as it is a fine art. How you deal with these situations sometimes has a lot to do with how successful or not you'll be as a photographer. My photography mantra is avoid preconceptions. I try to go out there in a very open state of mind. My choices are totally instinctual based on whatever's in front of me. It could be a moment, an object, a landscape, the light, a color. It makes no difference. Generally, I'm not trying to influence it as much as just capture what's there. The other thing I try to do is just keep it simple. Less is more. Try and approach a photo like a short story writer might. Say the most with the least. Over time, I think everybody hits creative blocks. And the one thing you learn is that it doesn't last forever. You just try to work through it. Sometimes doing a personal project can lead to a professional assignment or vice versa. Sometimes it's just a matter of backing off and not overthinking it. And another thing that's really important is to have other interests outside the photo world. I think the more well-rounded you are, the more successful you'll be creatively. I'm not at all what I would consider a technical photographer. I know just enough to get what I need out of the camera, and so normally I'm less interested in technique and more concerned with seeing. I want the photograph to be appreciated for the overall vision rather than the technique. There's another part of my photographic life, and that is teaching. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to give back to a profession that has been good to me by mentoring, leading photo tours, and teaching workshops. I love the fact that my students come from diverse backgrounds and professions, but are all brought together by their love of photography. On the flip side, teaching is a two-way street. I found that I get back as much from my students as I give them, and I'm really humbled by the quality of the work that they produce in the short time that we spend together. For me, it's a privilege to help guide them toward their individual goals. People ask, what's your favorite image? Man, that's a bit like asking which is your favorite child. Of course, there are photos that we all like for different reasons, but photographers, I think, are the worst. They get too often hung up with what it took to get a particular image or where you had to go to get it, and that's not always a good criteria for selecting your best work. And besides, in the end, I think most of us don't want to be remembered for just one photo, but rather for an overall body of work. One picture that did change my approach to photography is the one of the women in the rice planting festival from Japan. I remember starting out on the first day, just walking around with 3 cameras, with motor drives, 7 lenses, a tripod, and just about anything else I could stuff in my camera bag. I guarantee you, I didn't take too many pictures that day, but I did have a major shoulder pain that night. So I stripped off the motor drives from the camera bodies, and the next day took only 2 cameras, 3 lenses, no tripod, and that's pretty much what I worked with for the next couple of weeks while I was there. That photograph is my constant reminder that the less you carry, the more pictures you take. Because you're no longer thinking about the weight on your shoulder, and you're spending more time looking and shooting. Look, you want to be a good tennis player, you need to go out and hit tennis balls every day. You want to be a good photographer, you need to go out and shoot every day. Even if you don't make photographs, it's all about the process of looking and training your eyes to see. This is one of the wonderful things about photography as a profession. I mean, at the end of the day, how many plumbers enjoy fixing leaks in their free time? For me, photography is and always has been a joy as well as an addiction.